Hi, and welcome to Leadership at Lattes. I'm Bill Montgomery. It's great to be back with you, and I'm excited about my guest today, a gentleman that I have watched from afar for a number of years, but has now become a friend over the last year or two. I want to introduce you to Michael Redd. How are you, my friend?
My brother. Thank you for having me, buddy. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sincerely.
We've got a couple things in common. Mostly that we're Columbus Public School graduates.
Yes. Yes.
You know, so West High School, is
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Brookhaven for myself. But if you're not familiar with Mike's career, Ohio State Buckeyes got him to a Final Four back in the day.
Eons ago.
Ago. Had a little time in the NBA with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
And even a gold medalist with USA Basketball, the Redeem Team, I believe you guys were called. Fun little special on Netflix that want to catch up on that. But maybe just a quick snapshot. What are you doing these days with your time?
I'm hanging with you.
I mean, it's perfect.
And we've spent a lot of time over the last year or so together, which has been special to me. And getting a chance to know you on a personal level and your character and what you represent, it's been a joy. Outside of that, I think being a husband and being a father.
Yeah, I love that.
That's been the primary focus above all. There's other things I'm engaged in, but trying to raise teenagers at this point. I am in the solar eclipse of parenting right now.
I love it.
So it's a unique time for my wife and I in raising our children, but also continuing to stoke the fire with my wife, you know, and spend time with her. And we've been married 18 years, which is a blessing. 18 years. And so grateful for our relationship and how it's grown over the years. And the fire's still lit. We still like each other. I think there has to be intentionality when it comes to your family, because we can be so inundated with different things, and there's so many things around us to get engaged with. But the number one thing to engage is your family. So,
well, and I would imagine too, you know, part of that marriage, a good part of it early on, was a life on the road.
Yeah.
And it's hard, I would imagine, during that to build into your wife and build into your family just because you're traveling and they don't travel with you. And
Correct.
so being able to now give back into that's got to be special for just kind of putting all that back together
100%.
instead of losing it.
100%. You know, when I retired from the NBA, which was 11 years ago, I can't believe that, but time flies. But the priority all the more was to spend time with my family, watch my kids grow up and spend time with my wife. So that's been the paramount thing for me.
I love it. That's so good. Well, with our guests on this season of the podcast, we are trying to spend time just on a leadership trait or characteristic that you have found especially important. And my guess is, I mean, you've been around world-class coaches, players, you know, people in leadership circles, even in the faith community, I mean, and different pastors and Christian leaders. And so you've probably heard and shared a wealth of that type of information. I'm curious, is there a characteristic or two that you just feel is pivotal for being a good leader in today's culture?
Well, leadership begins at the home, obviously, with the wife and the kids, you know, in the home. I think it's a violation to try to lead outside of that. So, but that's where it begins. And leadership to me, within even that realm, is serving. It's all about serving people at the end of the day. And, you know, leadership really is, I believe, something that can be taught for sure. But I think it's something that can be caught as well. Because you have to learn how to follow before you learn how to lead.
Yes.
And so what makes a great leader is someone who's been a great follower. And so I think one who loves to serve, embrace serving people. I would say this about leadership. Leadership is not always seen, but it's felt. It's like the wind. We can't see the wind, but we can feel the wind though, right?
Yeah.
So I think leadership embodies that. Like it doesn't always have to be the most boisterous or the loudest, but it's the one who can serve the most, actually.
Do you find that message of serving is a little bit countercultural out in the world, and even in the NBA, a lot of big egos. Yeah. Serving doesn't seem like something that people are like, oh, I'm here to serve. How does that, how do you see that reflected maybe in that type of culture?
Yeah, it's I think it's all around us.
Yeah.
Not just the NBA. I think even in business.
100%.
As an investor in companies, I'm always of the mindset of serving our entrepreneurs and our leaders. How can we help them more so than, helping us or focusing only on our ROI and, the P&L and whatnot, but like, how can we actually serve these young leaders and these leaders? ROI is important, P&Ls are important.
Yes.
Make no mistake about it, but at the same time, it's about how do we invest in people. So I own a company called 22 Ventures, that's our firm. And the thesis of that firm is to actually invest in people to grow companies. So instead of focusing on growing the company and disregarding the person, we actually would rather invest into the person, spiritually, mentally, physically, holistically. And as the person or individual is healthy, the company will be healthy, we believe. So that's our theory and that's our thesis. And I believe that's the heart of God, though, at the end of the day. The human condition is the heart of God.
I love that. I say that is deep too. There's a lot that that goes with it. Do you have any scripture passages that even stick out in your mind as you're thinking about the heart of God and how we're supposed to serve that maybe are core to what you're doing?
Yeah, the prophet Elisha, who was after the understudy of Elijah, the prophet.
Yes.
And it's not talked about too often about how he was discovered, actually. The prophet Elisha was discovered by the ability to be able to be a servant to Elijah, actually. So there was a need for a prophet in the land. The king is looking for a prophet, and people are saying, hey, there's this guy, Elisha. And the king says, how do you know about Elisha? Well, we saw him serving water and pouring water over the prophet's hands. So Elisha was just serving Elijah the majority of his life.
Wow.
And Elijah goes away, as we all know, and then Elisha steps into the double portion of what Elijah walked in. But that came from a servant's heart, though. That was a secondary consequence of him just wanting to serve Elijah. And so could it be that we're identified by how we serve?
Wow.
Right? And how we humble ourselves, abase ourselves to serving mankind. Jesus says the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but he came to serve.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an incredible quality and characteristic of God's nature in us as leaders.
Yeah. When you're looking in the business community, especially from an investor standpoint, are you looking for that willing heart, that person that's already showing signs of a servant, or are you trying to coach that or teach that into somebody, or is that even possible?
Well, I think culture is obviously a dynamic word within all of our entities, right? I think culture is derived from the leader. Meaning, for example, at our offices in Gehenna, I try not to park up front. I try to park away from the building to allow other folks to park up front, right? Whenever there's trash on the floor, I'm gonna identify it and pick it up. And so I think as you lead in that regard, that becomes that's a magnetism to that. There's a draw from that. There's I don't know. It becomes contagious when you are leading in that regard. And so I think culture is incredibly important. It cannot be ignored. If you're not focused on your culture, then you probably have a bad one. And culture is the leader. Yeah. Right? The leader sets the tone. And it's all about how can we serve, be considerate of other people, and that can be contagious within the organization.
Hey there, leaders. Have you heard about Dolce Sweets? They're not your typical, ordinary, average chocolate company. No, they are something special. Their handcrafted chocolates and nostalgic candies are created with care to inspire joy and connection. And I have sent so many of them. I get rave comments, feedback. It's unbelievable. You're not going to be disappointed. And just for Leadership and Latte listeners, Dolce Sweets is offering 20% off a trio bundle of your choice when you use the code BILL20 at checkout. So head over to Dolce Sweets, D-U-L-C-I, sweets.com to snag your discount and share your appreciation. Or enjoy them yourself. Dolce Sweets, goodness created to be shared.
I forget who it was I was reading or listening to recently, and they were talking about culture, and that culture, you either are creating it or it is happening to you.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it unattended, you're going and that's what you said. It's probably going to be bad.
100%. 100%. That's everything, right? The standard is our culture within organizations, and it's all about serving and consideration. And I think one of the things that I learned from my time in playing basketball was the importance of team. How can we lay our egos aside, come together, and do something for the greater good of the whole of the group? And on the Olympic team in 2008, we were able to experience that at a high level. So as you can imagine, everyone had their own egos and bravado, and so we all had to lay that aside, to a degree, to come together and to be something that was bigger than us. So although there's something big inside of you, it's important to be a part of something bigger than you.
Wow.
And I think that is an important thing. And with that comes humility. When I think of a leader and think of culture, I think of humility.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Does that make sense, Bill? I mean, you're a leader. You get it.
No, I agree, and it's interesting because it seems like so many of these characteristics are linked.
Yeah.
Like, you are not going to be a servant leader, even in a position of authority, if you don't have the humility that informs the serving, where it's like, if this is above me, and again, not that it may be your sole job to do the lowest things in the company, but if you're unwilling, and it goes back to kind of that people seeing what you're doing, the caught versus taught, is if you teach one thing and behave in a different way, people are going to see that much more than, oh, this is what I said, this is what I think is
a great point.
better to do.
It's a wonderful point. People don't tell lies, they live lies. So your life, Paul talks about our life as a living epistle, open and read by men. So it's not about what you say per se, but it's about what's on what you say and then how you live your life behind the words. So you're right, and that's culture. And it's a dynamic that I certainly prioritize within everything that we do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. How, as you think about, you talked about one of your key roles right now is being a father of teenagers. Any practical ideas of how that even plays out in, leading our family or leading our kids and being that servant leader and exercising humility in a way that they can see and touch?
I think in that dynamic, and in every situation, I think leaders listen, actually.
Oh, yes.
Listen to your children, listen to your teammates, listen to your staff. There's something called the lone genius syndrome. And the lone genius syndrome is you being the smartest one in the room. If you're the smartest one in the room, you probably want to leave that room and go to another room. And so even with my kids, I'm at a stage now where I'm listening more than trying to impose. Guiding as a parent, for sure.
Yeah.
But listening. And the scripture talks about being slow to speak and quick to listen, right?
Yes.
And I think that's an incredible quality of a leader, is that the leader is not reactionary, but responsive. And patient, processing things, information. I do that with my kids every day, and there obviously the temptation to always want to correct and without hearing them and hearing their heart. But even in our marriage, my wife, learning how to listen. And so it takes a level of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, obviously intelligence.
Yeah.
But I think relational intelligence as well.
Yes.
A lot of emphasis on IQ, EQ, but not enough emphasis on RQ, relational intelligence.
Wow.
So being intentional with that is just as important as the other two.
That's funny. I'm hearing a lot more EQ, emotional intelligence that goes with your regular intellect. I haven't heard a lot about relational intelligence. Unpack that a little bit more.
And being intentional on how you connect with people.
Yeah.
Which is part of what a leader does.
Yeah.
Being able to relate. Being able to be the embodiment of the real Me Too movement, which is Me Too.
Yes.
I think that's an important quality of a leader is relatability, empathy, sympathy.
Yes.
And one has to be in touch with themselves, right, to be able to exude that out to others. And I think that's some of the things that I'm trying to work at myself.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because, again, if you're going to relate to other people, it goes back to what you're saying. You've got to listen, because if you don't ever hear them,
right?
How do you know? It's funny. I'm connecting, as you said, this kind of two different passages. In James, where you were quoting from we need to be quick to listen, slow to speak.
Is that where that's found?
It is James 1.
Okay.
And then you know that you're killing me. You are killing me. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry.
Yeah.
And I have not connected these, but I initially connected as we were talking about parenting, and it's like, fathers, don't provoke your children to anger.
Right.
And it's like, there's probably a connection there where if you're not listening, if you're not providing some empathy, some relational intelligence, you're probably going to be provoking them
100%
to anger.
That's exactly right. Listening and learning. Listening. So a lot of times we tend to have a scripted response based off what we just heard.
Yeah.
Rather than just listening and improvising and just, flowing. Like I don't want to have a ready answer for your conversation with me, right? So being able to feel and that takes work, individual work. So you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. And part of it is, I think we spend most of our conversations like, I'm just waiting for you to finish so I can say my next thing, as opposed to, I'm just going to listen. And if I got to take a gap or we got to breathe and think between the conversation, we're going to get a lot further, even in some awkward silences.
100%. 100%. I have no inhibition to be right.
Boy, that's so good.
Oh, hear me, listeners, on this one. We live our lives to be right.
Yes. So
compared to just being open to listen and learning and being curious. I think curiosity is an incredible quality of a leader.
Yes.
I don't have to have the right answer. I just want us to be right. And whatever it takes for us to be right, that's the target.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. Well, and that feeds back again into the humility is when I'm more concerned about getting things right as opposed to me being right, I'm going to have more humility because I don't care that I've got to go, wow, I missed that. I was wrong.
100%.
Now I got to hit the reset button there.
And that's a personal affirmation thing with you and the Father, because you're operating out of an orphan heart. Now, that's another conversation for another day. But we have leaders posing as orphans, or orphans posing as leaders.
Yes.
And you have to be affirmed by the Father in order to ever lead. Because if you're not, insecurity will bubble up, jealousy will bubble up, narcissism will bubble up.
Yeah.
And so, not to be judgmental, but I mean, those are things that bubble up if you don't handle, I believe, from a spiritual standpoint, the connection with the Father.
Yeah.
I believe affirmation has to settle in before I lead anything. So Jesus, the day he was baptized, not to be too biblical on this topic, but God says, the Father says to the Son, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. Then he starts his ministry. There was nothing he had done prior from our perspective to warrant why he was pleased with Yeshua. He had done nothing for 30 years that we had saw. Right, in the scriptures.
Yeah, we're not reading any of that life.
No, at all. But the Father was pleased with him. And I think that's important to receive that affirmation from the Father before you launch out into endeavors. Because if not, you'll be insecure and you'll be an orphan.
Oh my goodness. That's another podcast.
It is.
Another meeting, and I know
Sonship.
you do some of that. I love that. Well, I think as we hit that, this is probably just a good place for us to land. on that. One thing I'd love folks, I know you do some writing on LinkedIn. Folks could follow you over there. Look up Michael Redd.
The Michael Redd app.
Oh, tell me about that.
The Michael Redd app. It's in the App Store.
Okay.
So I'm going to be releasing content on my own app. You can follow me on all my social platforms.
Fantastic.
I'll send out push notifications through my app on when I'm on a show or what have you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool ordeal. So
I love that. That is fantastic. Any other places we could follow you socially, or that'll point you to everything?
The Michael Redd app
right
will
there.
point you to everything.
That's amazing.
It's my hub for everything, Michael Redd. So
that's fantastic.
obviously you mentioned Betting on Yourself, the podcast, my personal podcast.
Yes.
I've done for a number of years.
Yep.
Really inspirational stories about entrepreneurs and their
for sure.
journeys and leaders and celebrities. So
Okay.
I don't know what you're doing, you know. But yeah, it's been fun to hear stories from people over the years and learn from them, you know. So, but I can't thank you enough for having me on the show, Bill. I think we've enjoyed being around each other the last year or so.
Absolutely.
It's been fun.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, this is special what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking time, and I know people are going to be encouraged and challenged and blessed by just a few words. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
That's great. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you the next time. Thank you.